Welcome back to the Reconize Game podcast. I am your host, T Clean TV, and today we have a super special guest. Now, I say they're all special, but this one's just a little bit more special. We're taking a look at content from a different perspective, from the management side. And I'm going to share a little backstory with you of how I know this person. This person manages some of the biggest names in esports today. He was the chief talent officer for the biggest esports organization, FaZe, for those of you guys that want to know. This brother is an advisor. He's a talent evaluator. He's a consultant. He's a manager. He's just a world beater, man. This guy is everywhere, okay? This guy is everywhere. So for those that don't know, I'm talking about my boy, Darren. Darren, welcome to the Reconize Game podcast, brother.
Thank you for having me, man. What an intro,
yeah,
man.
Hey, you know what? You got to tell it like it is.
Hey,
you know what I mean?
I appreciate that.
You're definitely a world traveler. You know, I follow you on Instagram. I've been seeing you waking up on different continents for the last, month or so. You just been everywhere.
Yeah. It's been, look, we can really get into it. I'm sure we're going to have a topic about it. But right now I'm really focused on, like, the global aspect of what I'm doing now. Right. I feel like for the last 15 20 years of my life, obviously in LA, in Hollywood, doing that thing, but the world is changing, man.
Yeah,
it's rapidly, and so I just want to be at the forefront of that, and to be honest, kind of resurging my passion for finding about new things. Right. I think I've always been about that. What is the next thing that's going to be popping, because before I came into esports and gaming, I was very, very early to manage the first generation social media influencers, right? And before that, the first generation YouTubers, right? So every single time I've been just so fascinated about like what's the next era of entertainment look like, and to me it's international.
Yeah. You're definitely an international guy, global. Yeah. I mean, literally, I've been seeing you everywhere. I've been seeing you in Dubai. I've been seeing you in I think where you went to Singapore,
Thailand.
You've been everywhere.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to get started at the beginning.
Sure.
For the people that don't know who you are, like I said, this is Darren, man. He was at one point the chief talent officer for FaZe Clan. Basically, this is the person that you had to get through to join FaZe. Okay, so that's why this interview is super special, but also super important, so you guys can see something from a different angle. All right, so where did you grow up?
I was born in Toronto, Canada.
Okay.
Born and raised there my entire life. Went to high school there, went to college, undergrad there, and then I moved to LA around 2008, 2009.
Okay.
At that time, I was just graduating college. I went to school for something completely not tied to what I do now. I went to school for business, but I specialized in human resource management.
Okay.
At that time, I was like, HR is working with people, and I was like, I think I'm a good people person, but I didn't think I fully understood like HR, like was like an administrative kind of really kind of paper pushing kind of role back then when I was in school, but I've always had a passion for entertainment.
Okay.
And in high school, there's this HBO show that came out called Entourage.
Oh, yes.
And so I was immediately thrown into, I want to be a part of that world. I don't know how.
Okay.
Ari Gold was like a god to me back then as like a 17, 18-year-old kid. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but, I'm going to find a way.
Right.
And so, my freshman year of college and sophomore, I was looking at opportunities more so like Wall Street, more business, banks, that kind of thing. That was what my family and my parents expected me to do.
Right.
But on the side, I went to a Best Buy and I picked up like a handheld camcorder, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna learn everything about production and shooting and all that. So I actually picked up on my junior and my senior year. I actually minored in film studies.
Okay.
Which is also something that I'm not in either, but it did get me in, entertainment. And so I was, studying like film theory and things of that nature. Watched every movie you can think of from like the early 1900s all the way up here. So really understood kind of more the production and art of filmmaking. And from there, I decided I didn't want to, work or intern in Wall Street or for a big business or bank. So I started to shoot music videos for local rappers.
Okay.
So I did that for like a summer, and as you can expect, I mean, those were like pretty god awful videos.
Well, when you're starting out, everything is a little bit, kind of a learning curve.
Yeah, for sure. And it was no special equipment. Like I said, I went to a Best Buy and just picked up like a handheld camcorder that your dad would have used to shoot you as a kid. So I did that for a little bit. I kind of learned the ropes. I ended up interning for a pretty well-known producer in Toronto at that time, and he was shooting for literally every Canadian artist that you can think of, and then also American artists whenever they were touring through Canada. So I really learned and worked with some pretty big names, at least in the Canadian market at that time. But from time to time, as I started to do more of the productions, I started to get more responsibility, moved in from just being an intern to being an assistant producer to then producing. But then in about a year or so later, entertainment really changed.
Right.
So probably the era that we grew up in, MTV, VH1, BET is always about music videos. Around 2007, 2008, that all changed. MTV started to show less music videos, and it was more about reality TV shows and Jersey Shore. And so really quickly, I learned that, oh shit, like I clearly can feel budgets getting cut. Major labels are not spending as much money. Music videos were becoming a dying art. So I was like, okay, shit, what do I do next? But through the kind of the couple of years that I was doing that, I obviously had a knack with working with talent on set. And I kind of just built my relationships in that world. And I decided to then say, you know what, I'm going to represent TV film actors. So I actually moved from Toronto to LA. This is around 2009. And this is where my life gets pretty crazy. Right. Gets really interesting. I ended up, in the mailroom of a lot of different talent agencies. And then I ended up for a couple of years with my former mentor and boss. Her name is Joanne Horowitz. And she had a boutique management company. It was just like a two-man show. It was her and her assistant. And I was brought in. But what was interesting was she was Kevin Spacey's manager for his entire career.
Okay.
And why it got interesting for me was, at that time when I had started with them, Kevin had already been on top of the world, won every award you can possibly think of. And he was really just doing, kind of passion projects at this time. And so, he had done, some more, rom-coms like, I forgot what it was called with Jennifer Aniston, Horrible Bosses.
Okay. Love that movie.
Yeah, well, great cast.
Yeah.
It was fun, but that was kind of like the last project, at least when I got there, that he had shot. And then he ended up, going to London, and he was working theater. So it was his real passion, which, by the way, as talent managers, we didn't eat off of that because, that was his own thing. And then obviously he started his own production company as well. So he was producing some of, the biggest movies at that time, Social Network, a lot of those different things. So he was doing less of the acting thing. But then this script came across our desk. It was called House of Cards.
Oh, yes.
So really funny story for those of you that don't know. Obviously, I assume everyone watching has a Netflix account.
Yeah.
You have probably seen hundreds, if not thousands now, of Netflix original series and movies, but House of Cards was actually the first one ever.
I didn't know that House of Cards was the first one ever. I knew it was a Netflix original, but that was the first one
ever.
And that's something that you worked on?
Yes. So that was kind of my first foray, actually. So I read the script, and obviously his agent at CAA obviously loved it as well. My boss at that time also loved it. It was also a show that was already a hit in the UK on BBC. And Kevin loves the UK. He's actually knighted by the Queen.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, he dwells out there.
Kevin Spacey.
Yeah,
okay.
Sir Kevin Spacey. I mean, and we can go into all the other stuff around him, but like that's why my life got really interesting.
Right.
But yeah, it actually took quite a while to actually get Kevin on board.
Okay.
Naturally, this is someone who's done, $100 million budgets, big screen. For anyone to say, okay, I'm going to go back to the small screen, and not just like network small screen, right. A streaming platform that no one has ever done. And so there was a lot of hesitation as to for him to actually join that. But then, a couple of months later, there was some redrafts of the script. This writer named Bo Willimon that Kevin knows very well rewrote the pilot, and then David Fincher came on board to direct.
Okay. That
kind of changed things. And yeah, so from there, the rest is history. I mean, you guys know what happened with that show. It exploded, and it kicked down the door for Netflix to, do
what they do now.
Before it was just DVDs, right?
Right.
And kind of B-list movies, but that really kind of just launched everything. And so from there, I got called and headhunted by this company at that time called Maker Studios.
Okay.
For those that you have been on YouTube or watched YouTube, since that era, you might know or have heard of them, but they were the first ever YouTube network that kind of represented, but also, put all these YouTube creators together.
Right.
And it was also the first network that was created by creators.
Right.
They were all YouTubers at that time. Some of you guys might know who they are: Shay Carl, Timothy Delgado. People of that time started Maker Studios, and so they came to me, and primarily my job at that time was, they were like, hey Darren, since you did this whole House of Cards thing, you must think like streaming is the future.
Right.
And I'll be perfectly honest, back then I didn't know if it was gonna be the future. Actually, YouTube, the sentiment towards that platform at that time for Hollywood was, we don't touch that. That's for kids.
Yeah.
Like, why would we do, big budget movies and then care about kids who have shitty webcams in their bedroom? Like, we're not playing in the same world.
Right.
And I remember when there was all these like web series or like YouTube series. If for those of you who have ever represented TV film actors, you'll know this platform called Breakdown Express.
I do know that.
I remember back in that day when you would see web series on Breakdown series, you would just not even look at it. I would submit none of my clients to it.
Right.
Because A, there's not paying, and B, no one at that time would see it, or at least we thought.
Right.
And so I remember, doing some rounds of interviews, meeting with Maker, and primarily what they wanted me to do is, help us like get traditional celebrities onto YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I was like, I don't know. I don't know about that, right? But then they're just like, look, do you watch YouTube? I'm like, yeah, like here and there. They're like, let us show you one of the biggest YouTubers that we work with. And his name is PewDiePie. And, he was the king at that time. And so I was watching and watching a couple of videos, and of course I knew nothing of what I was watching. I was like, well, who is this Swedish guy just yelling into a mic?
Back then, that's all he did.
That's all you did. Yeah. And I'm just like, I don't understand this. And then they're like, but Darren, look at the numbers.
Right.
And then I was like, okay, I have no idea why there's so many views, but there are, and I'm not going to be ignorant to the fact that these are real views. So, I took a leap of faith. I went from being at that time the top of the world working on House of Cards with Kevin with the hottest show, which, by the way, the only award up to that date that Kevin did not ever win was a Golden Globe, and he got a Golden Globe off of that. And so, like I said, I was like on top of the world, and I don't know why I took the leap of faith, but I did. I'll tell you that my first 6 months at Maker was probably the hardest time of my life.
Because you're basically starting from scratch all over again.
Right. And then picking up the phones and calling all these creators, but also calling all my old network to be like, hey, like, does so-and-so, what do they think about YouTube? And no one cared.
So at the beginning, I just want to understand, at the beginning, it was like you had to cold call people to try to even get in the door.
Yeah. Well, that was my job. That was my job, was just cold calling both like emerging creators, specifically focused on entertainment and comedy, and then obviously traditional celebrities and more traditional entertainment entities at that time. Like I said, no one cared. No one cared. Darren, like we can't focus on this. This doesn't make us any money. Because that was the first thing everyone always asks. It's like, how much money are we going to make?
Right.
And, you know, at that time, CPMs were just rolling out. Monetization was just rolling out. Right. It wasn't even for everybody. And not only that, like, you're not making any real money until you have an audience or even a subscriber base, right? So, you know, for celebrities, they're expecting money up front, a lot of it, you know, and that time was like kind of the tail end of the golden era of Hollywood where, you know, a lot of these celebrities were making massive money, right? So yeah, I was like, what did I do? Like, why did I take this leap of faith? But then, you know, 6 months, 8 months later, my whole world became easier. Like, and I didn't do anything. It's all of a sudden, everybody wanted to be on YouTube. Everyone started to understand on their own that, okay, if we want to be in tune with the next generation of entertainment, this is where it's at. And so all of a sudden, all the people that were ignoring my calls are now calling me back, right? Yeah. And then everyone needed a strategy. And so I was doing that for like a year and some change, and I did really well at that. But then I was, okay, what's next? And so that's when I started to look at other emerging platforms, right? And at this time, it was kind of an arms race of all new social media platforms, right? So Instagram popped up.
Okay.
Vine popped up. Periscope popped up.
I remember Periscope too.
There's another, I forgot what the other Periscope competitor, there was another live, but you know, YouNow, like there's so many of these platforms that just came up, which honestly, for the younger audiences, you guys on TikTok, there'd be no TikTok without any of the things I just named.
Without Vine.
Yeah. So Vine was actually really interesting. I don't know how much I can share, but there's a lot of people that always ask me about like, what happened to Vine? I was like, funny story.
Yeah. So what happened to Vine?
Yeah. So look, just
from the people in the know.
This is so funny because I'm wondering if anyone ever spoke out about this, and I don't really care now, but because it's been so long. But yeah, so what had happened was, you know, I started to work with a lot of the top Viners at that time. Mm-hmm. I actually gave a lot of the top Viners like their first big paycheck. Okay. So everyone from, you know, the Lele Pons of the world to Jake Paul, Logan Paul, Rudy Mancuso, you know, Christian Del Grosso, like all these kids back in the time that were just super popping. Mm-hmm. I had signed a few of them to Maker at that time, which, by the way, really opened up an entire world of new audiences, right? It went from YouTubers, right, to influencers. Creators was not yet a term yet because creators came after that kind of blanket everyone. But yeah, the social media term influencer really came with the birth of Instagram and Vine. So with Vine, there's a lot of learned lessons there. One, as you know, and as many people know, that platform exploded very, very quickly. Yeah. The viewership was as real as it gets, but they had not figured out how to monetize on it. No one was being paid. Right. And then, you know, sure, there were a couple of Viners that learned how to do brand deals and things of that nature, but that was like their only source of income, which was kind of not that many because, once again, a very, very new, you know, thing to this world, to the digital world. Like sponsorships on Vine, no one knew how to do that before. Right. That was non-existent. Sponsorships on Instagram, same thing. It was non-existent. Right. We were just starting how to figure out branded integration on YouTube, never mind these other things. So, you know, fast forward, Twitter acquired Vine. And with that, there was kind of like a coup. Okay. With the top 1% of Viners, because essentially they claimed that they are the reason why Vine is big and why they got acquired, but none of them got paid out by Twitter. Right. This is so funny. I don't know if anybody knows this story. So the top, I believe it was like the top 20 at that time. And they all lived in the same apartment complex called 1600 Vine. It was on Hollywood and Vine. It was like everyone. It was
anybody that was anybody.
Anybody was anybody
that was in that building.
And it was like a dorm, right? So like you had Jake and Logan on one door, and you had Rudy on the other, and these kids would just be shooting all day, every day. It was like Friends, like the show. Right. They just walk into each other's apartments and start shooting.
So that was kind of essentially like the first content house, so to speak, pseudo content house.
Yeah. I mean, like it was just so fitting because Vine Street, Vine app, and and they were at the height of their popularity. So you would go in there sometimes. Justin Bieber was in there. The Kendall Jenner was in there because they all wanted to be friends with the Viners at that time. They were the hottest things, like literally the hottest things. But yeah, so they all banded together, and they decided to make a proposition to Twitter, and pretty much they gave them an ultimatum saying, "Look, you are gonna pay all of us X amount of dollars. I'll put it at, it was a seven figure number."
Now, did they want that individually or as a group?
Oh, individually.
Okay.
Individually. Okay. Right. So there's maybe like 15 or 20 of them. Right. And I remember at this all going down, they all went to the Twitter offices, like sat them down and be like, "Look, this is what's going to happen. If you don't pay us, all of us are leaving Vine." And, what I had heard was that I think they had agreed to some terms.
Okay.
But what had happened was it was only like 20 of them. And those are kids. Yeah. And you know what we know about kids? They don't know how to keep their mouth shut.
Exactly.
And so the rumors start to fly that these guys went to Twitter to go get money. And then, of course, there are all these other Viners, the top 100 or top 250 were like, no, we want in. Yeah. And once that started to happen, everything fell apart.
Yeah, the deal fell out.
It fell apart. Yeah, you couldn't do it. And then the Viners stuck to the word. We're not posting. We're out of here. And those are for those that were smart enough to evolve and diverse into YouTube are still the ones that are probably relevant today. Yeah. I mean, there's so many Viners I can think of right now that who knows what they're doing today.
Who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, so they died with the platform, right? So yeah, that was an interesting time with Vine. But God, they really fumbled the bag. That was such an amazing platform.
Yeah, you always see these things where these big conglomerate type companies and when they have an opportunity to continue on with success, it has to stop because someone drops the ball.
Yeah. And here's the thing too. It's like very early on, and this is where I came in. Like a lot of these guys were unrepresented. Yeah. I mean, like who was going to be like managing YouTube? I mean, social media influencers when no one even knew what it was. And not only that, like they weren't really monetizing. So, they did have like some lawyer friends and stuff that helped them, but a lot of them were unrepresented as well at that time. So, it was a very, very interesting and wild west.
I can only imagine. And that was your foray into digital and being someone to manage people.
Yeah, so that's how I actually started my career in managing digital personalities. Was soon after around that period, we were courted by Walt Disney.
Wow.
And we ended up selling or getting acquired by the Walt Disney for $1 billion at that time. Ooh. Yeah, it was the first YouTube company to be partnered or acquired by another giant media company. The competitors at that time, Full Screen, they were with AT&T. Machinima was acquired by Warner, but we were the first with Disney. And to this day, probably maybe one of the worst acquisitions that Disney has ever made because it no longer exists anymore.
Right, because the valuation was $1 billion, and that's just money that's kind of just
and also the they're called MCNs, but the MCN model, business model in general, is a race to the bottom, and it was doomed to fail from the very beginning. Yeah. But also what was the double whammy for me was, once we got acquired by Disney, of course, everything kind of became Disneyfied.
You got to get squeaky clean it up.
Everything was about ABC Family, about the Mickey Mouse ears and the princesses and things of that nature. And, for someone like myself, like I do have a tendency to work with kind of like the more edgy individuals and quote unquote cool people. you know, all of that kind of started to slow down because we had to think about like Disney. But I was working with like rappers and EDM DJs and like, you know, people that don't have filters, you know, things of that nature. So then quickly thereafter, I had left Maker or Disney at that time, and I started to consult for a lot of the folks that I was working with at Maker. But then I also had this massive, expensive network of all these new creators and influencers. And like I said, at this time, still very early on. So getting deals and sponsorships was still not like a consistent thing. And because I was so early on, I was kind of the first individuals in the industry to start doing that. And so my consulting was also bringing some of these new deals to some of these influencers who had not yet been represented, or if they're represented, I'm working with their managers and agents as well. So I did that for a little bit, and then I consulted for some emerging social media platforms, most of which failed. That's kind of the game. Like a lot of my story, there's a lot of failures.
Yeah, but you know, you persevered, and
for sure,
you are, you know, and you know, you were kind of, from what I'm hearing, bro, you were kind of on the forefront of a lot of things, you know, taking a lot of leaps of faith, believing in yourself to make something work.
And that's another thing too. I knew everything was new. So there was no blueprint. So there was an opportunity for me to create the blueprint, right? And I can make the mistakes and do all that kind of stuff. And it was so brand new as well, right? So after a little bit of doing that, I got approached by a couple of personal friends who ended up becoming my future business partners. So two of them actually came to me, and knowing that I'm experienced in working with talent, and they come to me and say, "Hey, Darren, we want to start a talent management company, and obviously with your experience, we think that you should join us." And at that time, I actually turned them down. I said, "Look, guys, I'm pretty good with what I'm doing right now. I've done the management thing in the past." You know, and you know, back then there were, you know, caps to what commissions were, and so I was like, guys, like 10-15% is not a real business, right? You know, I can't, you know, that's not my thing. So then they ended up coming back, and you know, a couple months later, and was like, hey, we want to refocus our business model into gaming and esports.
Okay.
And I was like, guys, this is now far out of my element, because before they just want to start a management company, just, you know, wasn't really focused on any specific vertical. But my friends at that time were major gamers themselves. And so I was like, guys, I'm now out. Right. Because I know nothing about gaming and esports. They're like, do you know this platform called Twitch? I'm like, I know what it is, but I don't watch it. Like,
so back then it was wasn't it Justin TV at that time?
Justin TV. I think they had just maybe at this very early stage had just changed to Twitch.
Okay,
but it was still very much
we're talking
Justin
like
TV.
2011, 2000-ish time.
Okay. And so a lot of that, and you know, they say, hey, like, take a look at this kid on Twitch. He's the biggest streamer on the platform. And I said, cool, what's his name? Funny enough, his name was I'm a Cutie Pie. I'm just like, why does this sound so similar to my experience with PewDiePie? Right. I was like, okay, cool. So this kid was a former League of Legends pro esports player turned streamer. And at that time, when I looked into him, he was streaming to like 50,000 people. He was the ninja, you know, at that time. Then, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And League was the biggest game by far.
I mean, still to this day, it kind of
is too. Yeah. But viewership wise, like that was the game. Mm-hmm. So I remember I was like, okay, cool. Let's just have this chat with him. Let me just kind of dig deep and see where, you know, where we could take this. And then they're like, yeah, there's something else we got to tell you. I was like, oh shit, like what else? So like these kids don't really like do phone calls or emails or even text messages. I'm like, okay, cool. What do they use? So they use a thing called a Discord. And most people today don't know what Discord is. Right. But imagine back then. Discord at that time when we were working with was like a 4 or 5 person team in San Francisco, right? Now they're fucking billions of dollars and a massive platform. But back then,
Nobody knew what that was.
I mean, no one knew what that was. I was like, okay, whatever. Get me on this Discord and I'll chat with this kid. Right. And as you could expect, he was your typical, stereotypical gamer, at least that I thought, you know, was very quiet, not talkative, barely looked into the camera when I was speaking with him. Long, natty hair, crispy white tee. This guy does not go outside. And he just wasn't even really having it, or wasn't really engaging in the conversation. Me trying to explain what representation or management was to a whole industry that it never existed. It was a really hard thing to grasp. So, you know, I then thought about, okay, what kind of topics would actually start, you know, getting him to talk. And I said, you know what, I'm just gonna be real blunt. How much money do you make?
There you go.
You know, and I remember what he said. And at this time too, we had an advisor / talent. His name is Skara. You guys might know him. He's a part of Offline TV. But he was actually the person that we spoke to first. He's like the John Madden of the league world, right? He was a former pro, but became a commentator. So he knew everybody. And he was the one who introduced us to Cutie. And I remember asking him, I was just like, how much money do you make as the #1 streamer on this platform? And I remember this so vividly. And he told us, like 40,000. I'm like, oh, that's not bad. Like 40,000 a month. He's like, no, 40,000 a year.
I can't even imagine.
I was like, so you're the #1 guy streaming to like 40, 50,000 people, and you're making almost damn near poverty line?
Yeah, yes.
And so I remember after that meeting calling my friends. I was just like, I'm in. Not because I know anything about esports or gaming, but because I understand data and opportunity. And so basically what we said to him was like, look, if I could double your annual income, will you take a chance at working with me and being managed by me? And he goes, yeah, but how are you going to do that? And I love telling this story because I always ask people, ask me how long it took to double his annual income.
How long did it take you to double his annual income?
13 hours.
Sheesh.
So it was funny because at this time I had a colleague that I remember who had asked me if I had any inroads to gaming, and I said, I don't know, fuck all about gaming. He's like, well, because his agency was the agency of record for Mountain Dew, and they were looking to get into that. So yeah, that happened very quickly, and I said, look, now you gotta introduce us to the number 2, 3, 4, and we need a female. And they're like, Darren, there is no female on Twitch.
Wow.
I mean, like, they're like, but there is this one girl, but she's super small, and she maybe streams to like 20, 30 people, but she streams League. I'm like, cool. What's her name and where's she from? And they're like, she's Canadian. I'm like, great, we're Canadian. We'll go fly up to her. What's her name? Her name is Pokey.
I already knew who it was when you said it. I knew who it was. Yeah.
And so I remember having this conversation with her, and we flew up, and she was in her last semester of college. She was I think she was like a biochem major or something like that. Big brains. Last semester, literally a couple months away from graduating. And I remember us convincing her, hey, look, like, how seriously do you want to take this as a career? She's like, I don't know. I just really love gaming. I don't know if I can make it a career because, like, who has made this a career yet? No one has. At that time, no one has. And I remember us talking to her, be like, look, why don't we fly you down to LA for 6 months? Skara has some space in his basement. And obviously you guys know each other, and to Pokey, Skara's a legend. Because he's like John Madden. So she took the leap of faith. I said, look, at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, you missed it on 6 months, you can go back to Canada and you can graduate. But at least you tried. She obviously never went back. She never went back, and she became the #1 female on Twitch. And quickly there, after the success of her, the coordinator that worked with me at our management company, her name is Hannah, also a really good friend of mine. But she was kind of learning the ropes as well in entertainment. And so this was kind of her first foray. But we were having a little bit of issues, like really, I guess, understanding Pokey from a female perspective.
Okay.
So I spoke to Hannah. I was like, look, I know that you probably have no experience doing this, but like, I think we really need your help, and maybe you should become the day-to-day for Pokey.
Okay.
And she did. And not only did she became the day-to-day for Pokey, I remember, after a couple of months of working with Pokey, Hannah comes to me and goes, hey, Darren, I've been looking at this girl on Instagram. I think that you could probably appreciate this, but I want to get your thoughts. So she hands me her phone, and I go through this Instagram page, and I was like, oh, she's really, really cute. And I was just like, but you said she's a gamer? Because every single picture was about fitness.
Right.
And I was like, she's like, yeah, she's a gamer. She actually works at GameStop part-time. But I really love her look. I'm like, Hannah, I love your thinking, because this is exactly where I come in. Yes, I was like, I know for a fact that gamers don't look like this, let alone females don't look like this. Right. And her name was Valkyrie.
Yep.
And so we signed Valkyrie, and she was our number 2 female. And then we also signed a slew of others that also became Offline TV, and we helped create Offline TV. And now it's one of the biggest gaming content creator groups out there. But yeah, that was the genesis of, and the birth of that was also through the management company that we had. Yeah. And also Hannah is now one of the most experienced gaming agents. She's at UTA, Forbes 30 under 30, and she represents literally the top 1% of every female in the space.
Man, it's so crazy to hear these stories, because it's like, you think about this saying, your network is your net worth. Yeah. And it's all just based off of just the people that that put you and other people in position to be who they are today. Yeah. Especially when it comes to starting, something new, like new platforms, starting a new company, and just being able to maneuver through those things.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, and just seeing, and like I said, the thing is at that time, we really didn't have much competition either. Right. We were the most professional management company in the space, no doubt about it. Were there managers in gaming and esports? They were like They were the friends of the gamers who were like 15, 16-year-old, had absolutely no experience. And so, within within about 9 months after we opened up shop of this management company, what had happened was all these brands start to come to us, because there's no marketing agency, no influencer agency that understood gaming and how to even spend money or how to even get to the talent, right? And we were the only people in town. And so we quickly started to get a lot of business, but there was a lot of also conflict of interests, right? Mm-hmm. We all of a sudden were acquiring a lot of brand clients, as well as we had our talent clients. Mm-hmm. And for those of you guys who know the game of this world, they're on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, esports and gaming, essentially.
Yeah. And the brands have their own needs and wants when they spend. So I think within like 8 months of us opening the management company, we opened up a marketing agency. Okay. Specifically in gaming and esports, where we can service our brand clients, and then our talent management service our talent. Right. And then within 2.5 years of that, so not even 3 years of both these companies, we had every major talent agency in Hollywood circle us and bid for our business. Yeah. So we had CAA, UTA, Gersh, Paradigm, WME. Everyone spoke to us at that time, and there were a couple other competitors at that time. But like, once again, I would say with confidence, we were probably the most professional, obviously, because me and my business partners, all serial entrepreneurs, very experienced in what we did, and we were kind of like the only option, to be honest.
I mean, when you're the only option, there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah, there's nowhere else to go. So we ended up selling both the businesses to United Talent Agency to create UTA Esports, which is now one of their most flourishing and fastest growing departments. I was told that I think they were probably the most earningest department during the pandemic.
Wow. Well, I mean, at that point in time, bro, content was going. I mean, content streaming, all that stuff was going crazy.
Wild,
okay,
wild,
like absolutely crazy,
bananas. So yeah, that's how I became a UTA executive through that acquisition. My business partners in that venture are still there to this day. They're the heads of the department, and they probably they don't monopolize, but they have the majority of the top talent under there, as well as some of the clients that I manage. Right. They're also with UTA. And then within about 8 or 9 months of me being at UTA, I get a call from FaZe Clan CEO Lee Trick.
I knew where this was going. So here we go. Everybody that wants to know, this is the story that I know everybody wants to hear.
Yeah.
The FaZe story. So here we go.
Yeah. So the FaZe story, very interesting enough. At that time, you know, FaZe had its reputation even back then. Yeah. You know, they were the bad boys of the gaming. Right. They partied. They lived in Hollywood. And to be frank, I didn't want anything to do with FaZe Clan.
Right.
I was just like, they're not for me. Yeah. You know, they're a little bit clout chasey.
Right.
I don't know if like, I think there's this one video that everyone always references, and what I always reference, and it's still ingrained in my head, is the video of Banks going into like a GameStop. You know,
I know exactly what video you're talking
that
about.
Video was the one video I was like, I never want to work with these kids.
Yeah.
These kids are cringy as hell.
Right.
But then, you know, they really dominated the Fortnite scene very early on, and they were the most popular. And, you know, I was also going through some personal things myself, and I kind of wanted to change a pace, so kind of like a perfect kind of storm of timing.
Okay.
And, you know, I didn't say yes right away, obviously, to Lee. We actually took maybe like 4 or 5 meetings, and I said to him, I am not going to your offices. We're only doing this meeting on a Sunday, and it has to be at night. And because the reason being was that, I just got acquired by UTA 8 months ago.
Yeah.
I had a 3-year contract with UTA to see the business through.
Yeah.
So breaking that contract at that time almost felt like next to impossible.
Yeah.
Right. And historically, UTA has never
allow somebody out of there.
Out of there. Yeah, exactly. They would rather just beach them. Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, Lee was just like, look, and I remember what he said too. He was like, look, Darren, if you had a time machine, and you can go back to year 1 or ground zero of, you know, the New York Yankees or Manchester United or the LA Lakers or the Dallas Cowboys, would you take that leap of faith? I'm like, damn,
He hit you right.
It hit me. I was just like, damn, I get to be on that end. And you know, once again, through all the success of the gamers that, you know, I was working with, and the success of our company, I was like, okay, that, not necessarily that I thought that FaZe Clan could be there, but there could be an org that might reach that height, right? I remember Lee's, one of Lee's goals was like, we want to be on the Forbes top most valuable sports teams, not esports teams, sports teams. That was his goal.
And me knowing Lee, I know he meant that.
Yeah. So that's at that point I was like, okay, make me an offer.
Right.
And of course, you know, that had happened, and I was able to figure out a situation with UTA, and obviously my partners as well. And in 2000, I think this is 2019. Is that 4 years ago? 5 years ago, almost.
Yeah.
Early January 2019 is when I joined FaZe.
Okay.
And my life changed immediately.
I can only imagine.
Immediately. I'll tell you what, a couple of first things that I ran into in my first week on the job, I just remember, like, you had to understand, I think, like I said, the boys had a reputation of being rock stars even back then, and they partied a lot. And so I just remember my first week was dealing with a situation of that world, right? Of something that happened, you know, at a party and all that kind of stuff.
So we'll just leave that right there.
We'll leave it right there.
I kind of know the situation.
Yeah, we'll leave that right there. Yeah. And I was just like, man, and this is such a different change of pace from like, the gamers that I was representing for the last 3 years.
The quiet guys that didn't say anything.
Oh, they would never go out. I remember. Shout out to my boy Moshe Leezy. He's the manager of Marshmello, and this is when Marshmello had just started to be a thing, right? And he was just about to blow, and he was having his first ever headlining show. At the Shrine here in downtown LA at USC, and he came to us and was like, yo, Marshmello is a big gamer. Like, he wants to invite all your clients out. And I was like, great. So I remember speaking like Pokey, and everyone's like, guys, Marshmello, he's inviting you guys out, rolling out the red carpet for you backstage. They're like, no. I'm like, what do you mean no? They're like, we don't know what to do. Like, we don't do this. This is outside our element. I'm like, guys, you need to expand your horizon. Yeah. It was pulling teeth. For any other like influencer or YouTuber that I worked before those guys, that would have been an instant yes right away. Yeah, let's do it. But yeah, I remember all of them at this show. I finally convinced them. They were all wallflowers. It was. I remember one of the comments. One of them said to me was like, "Hey, Darren, is this what the cool kids do? Is this what they do? This is." And I was like, you guys don't have to drink, but you guys could drink.
Right.
But yeah, it was a really funny scenario back then because that was a whole brand new world. But these got the FaZe guys.
Yeah.
This is their lives.
Oh, this is what they do.
This is what they do. Yeah. And so, that whole, change of pace was interesting. And then, funny enough, so since I'd moved to LA, as a Canadian, I had always had to deal with visa issues and things of that nature. And thing is, I never took a vacation ever.
I can imagine, because I know you saw the Booyah interview. I said the same thing to him, bro. Like, congratulations for taking a vacation.
Yeah. So get this. So before I had left UTA to go to FaZe, I had already booked this trip to Colombia with a friend of mine. And I was so excited for it because it was going to be my first ever vacation in like a decade, right? So I get to Colombia. I'm in Medellin, and I'm taking this tram above the jungle, and I get this call from Lee. And mind you, I haven't even been in Colombia for 48 hours. Okay. It's like my first excursion.
Right.
Hey, Darren, we need you back in LA. And I'm just like, Lee, I literally just landed in Colombia yesterday. And I told you that I had this trip booked before I even started with FaZe. What is it? Sends me a bunch of links on text. FaZe Clan Fortnite star sues FaZe Clan for horrible contract.
Oh yeah, you were on that first plane.
I was just, and here, a lot of people don't know, and I don't even know if I'm allowed to even talk about this, but or what I can say, but I'll say it from my perspective. From your perspective, about things I worked on. Okay. I won't go into the other details about this, but the most heartbreaking thing about this whole thing, and this has never been said on camera or the public.
Another exclusive on the Game Recognize Game podcast.
And I don't even know that the majority of the people involved even know about this.
Right.
Is one of the first things that I did coming into FaZe Clan, I said, give me all the contracts. I want to see what they look like. I criticized the contracts my first week. Do you know what I had done for weeks prior to going to that trip? Worked on a new contract.
Okay.
And it was completed. It was done. I love this contract. It is probably a lot of the elements of that contract are still here today, which none of it is unfavorable to the talent or any of that nature.
Right.
In fact, I created with our former legal team, and we called it the birthday card a contract. Why we call it the birthday card contract? Because I said, look, most YouTubers and creators, they don't even know how to read legal languages. Right. Gamers? No way. Right. So I said, we need to make this as simplistic as possible. Mm-hmm. I don't want too much legal jargon in here. Mm-hmm. And so every single clause had the most black and white, simplest sentence about what the clause was. Right. Was, hey, this paragraph is about this, this, and this, and this. It means this, this, and this. And then the legal came afterwards, right? And it was just so heartbreaking because, we couldn't, actually, I don't know why, but we didn't mention that we had a new contract.
Right.
That it was already being changed.
Right.
And, I came back to that, and we were in a war room for hours.
And I won't say the person's name, but I know who it is.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, just based off of that, from your perspective. Again, everything is from your perspective. What did happen, what didn't happen.
Very, very, for all the lawyers out there, this is from my perspective. Yes.
Was what that person's saying, from your perspective, entirely accurate? And for those that follow the story, you know who we're talking about. We're not going to say the name, but...
All I'm saying is... he had procured a very creative lawyer. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
And I have, and not only that, I have tremendous respect for this lawyer as well.
Okay.
It's actually someone that I ended up working with in the future, actually.
Okay.
So, he was horrible to deal with on the other side of the table,
right.
But I think that.
That's his job.
That's his job, right? And I think that he was very, very creative of how everything went down.
Okay.
Was there some inaccuracies? 1,000%. But that wasn't the game for them. Right. It was like, who's going to win the public opinion?
And that's what it comes down to when it scales that high.
It's about the
public perception.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. So, that was my first 2 months at FaZe.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the first thing you had to deal with that situation.
Yeah.
That was a major situation.
And you know what the third thing I worked on to not cure, but to essentially make a shitty situation remarkable was I represented Nick Merckx at UTA with my former business partners who are still there, and I think everyone knows about that situation that he had with his former org, and
so you worked on that one as well.
That was my idea.
Okay.
I was just like, we need desperately a new headline to recharge the fans and get rid of all of this.
Right.
But also, not to mention, we should be signing another superstar.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And long story short, we ended up doing a deal with Nick, and we announced him in the thick of that situation. Right. And it was amazing. And obviously Nick is still with FaZe Clan to this day. Yeah. But that was the third thing that I worked on, and the things that I worked on at FaZe were just very quick.
Man, trial through fire for real.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, as far as FaZe is concerned. So when you first started at FaZe, was it the position that you held until you eventually left, or did you work your way up to that?
No, so I was a head of talent. Right. At that time, I wasn't the chief talent officer. That was something that I evolved into, but it was more of a title change just because we became more corporate. Yeah. But the responsibilities have always been the same since I got in, which was acquisition, development, and career management. Okay. 360, right? Okay. So that was me and my team, and that's something that was completely unique to FaZe Clan. I don't believe that there's any other organization in the entire world, not just in North America, that had in-house 360 talent management. And what that means is, I know people are like, 360 deal, and then all that, but it's not. What that actually meant was that we actually serviced everything about their career, both inside and outside of gaming. Okay. Right? People immediately think 360 term is this like greedy term, and for the most part, in other industries it did feel like that, but for us, we were 360 management, not 360 partnership, right? Not like a record deal, which meant that as management, we are capped at what we can earn on our talent, which was 20%, which is the industry standard, right? But we worked on everything, which was really important for us, right? And I think that a lot of people and creators now kind of adopted this thinking, was because it's not enough to just be a gamer or a single discipline, right? And it was more so about, how do we make sure that our talent were household names, both inside and outside of gaming, especially for people that have no idea what gaming is or what FaZe Clan is. Can we build our individuals such that people can discover them even if they don't know? Right. Really important. And also it allows us, because I identified this really early, with gaming. If you really look at the last 20, 30 years about the longevity of a title of a game, right? 99.9% of them don't even last a year.
Right.
How many titles can you think of that have last 10 years? Maybe 5 titles.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you think about that, like, if you're just tied to a single game or a single discipline, if that game falls off, so do you. It's very similar to the whole Vine situation, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why we weren't signing gamers. We were signing creators, right? That just happened to also game, right? So that's what our definition of 360 meant, right? It's very different than what a lot of people
what people would think it would mean.
Yeah.
Okay, so like what were some of your like day-to-day things that you had to do as far as the position or title that you held at FaZe?
Yeah, so as the head of talent, I think that's where, and I'll talk a little bit about why I left, but I wore many hats. Okay. So not only was I an executive for FaZe, and beside Lee and beside all the other executives making the key decisions for the business, I was also leading the talent management department in that team, right? And not only that, I also directly managed folks on my own. Yeah. Right. So, kind of had that 3 jobs, and then towards kind of my end, I was also raising up new businesses for FaZe, sports, music, things of that nature. But my day to day, honestly, was as corporate as it gets. In terms of I'm on rolling calls from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Right. And then doing emails after, but I really didn't have hours, especially as a talent manager. For those that guys that want to get into it, you have to know that this job is one of the most thankless jobs. There is no hours. You're on 24/7. You're at the mercy of your talent, right? They don't have schedules. These are gamers. They don't know the difference between Monday and Sunday. Correct. And their hours. You were one of them, right? So for me, it was a 24/7 job. I would be getting calls from these guys and texts from these guys at the middle of the night because that's when they ended the stream. So my day to day was just a lot of that. It was a true testament to how much I could persevere with this type of bandwidth. And a lot of people don't know this too. I'm a serial entrepreneur, so this wasn't the only thing I was working on. Like, I had things outside of gaming that I was also doing. So my life was 24/7, 7 days a week, 365, which is really hard why I couldn't go on vacation.
And every time I've ever saw you in passing, we would see each other. You were always never in one spot for more than a minute or two, and you're moving on to the next thing, you're moving on to the next person. And like you said, man, for people that want to get involved in this, they have to understand that this is, like you said, not only thankless, but you don't have a life at all. You don't. Outside of the people that you manage.
And if we were going to get super personal, this is, for me, it was very hard to keep up with a love life and a relationship. I was actually married during this time too. So
see, I didn't know that about you.
So I was married during this time, divorced now, but I would say a part of the contributions to that marriage failing was my lifestyle professionally. It was really, really hard to balance. And like I said, at times I always felt like my priorities were my clients because they always needed me. But it is not an easy job. It's not honestly something that could be taught in school. And like I said, the most important thing that if you do want to get into this is be okay with a thankless job. There's a saying, talent managers out there, you might know this saying, which is, we're the first one to get bitched at, last one to get thanked. Because we're always so available to the talent that it almost feels like it's automatic for us to be taking care of them, right? It's almost like they've been spoiled to that point.
Exactly. So another question I have for you, and I know this is something that people want to know, and I know you probably get asked this question a lot, but I have to ask it because I know the people want to know. As a talent evaluator, right? Like I said, you were basically the end all be all of who decided they could join FaZe. What were some of the things that you look for in creators that if someone wanted to join FaZe today and you were still there, what would be something that you would look for in that?
First, I want to say that, yes, I was definitely a part of the decision making. I primarily evaluated up until signing, but the decision to actually sign wasn't solely me.
Okay.
Actually, the founders are very much involved.
Okay.
Which, as you can imagine, if you know the founders, they all have very different personalities and interests, and it was very, very difficult to ever make a decision on who to sign because, if one person likes something about someone, another founder may not, and vice versa. And also, from my end, it was also, how do I balance the needs of what the founders are looking for, but also the needs of the business, which was an acrobatic thing every single time.
Right.
And so, but the things that I was specifically looking for, were based on my experiences working with talent, and especially FaZe Clan talent, to not repeat some of the hardships that they went through, right? Okay. And so, one, above anything else, is work ethic. Okay. I don't think that a lot of people understand, in order to be successful in this, like, the work ethic has to be crazy. Yeah. The competition of this world is, there's a new creator every second, creating a channel or something. Today, you know how many jobs are being lost, and the first thing they're thinking about is, I'm going to go and be a creator, and so, and then it's funny, I even say this to the boys, like, I said this to Jay Smooth 2 weeks ago, and I told him, and I say this to a lot of my clients too, I was just like, hey, watch the Joe Rogan segment with Mr. Beast. It's like an 8-minute clip. Okay. You guys should watch it if you haven't. But I said, watch it and then call me back. Okay. And they watched it. And I asked them, do you believe that you do 1% of anything that Jimmy said in that clip? And they all just stop. And they're just like, fuck. Damn. I was just like, you think that Mr. Beast, there's some luck or kind of magic genie of why he's the biggest creator in the world? No, like, when you look at some of the biggest creators in the world, even like in the FaZe ecosystem, like Rug. Right. Rug's work ethic cannot be matched by anyone in the org. And there's not, it's no secret why he is where he is, why Mr. Beast is where he is. Yeah. And what I say is, like, if you're not willing to put in that type of effort, like, don't talk to me about why you're not growing. Don't talk to me about, like, this is the other thing that I say too. It's like, don't blame your management, don't blame your org, don't blame the people around you. It starts with you, And even when I sign people, I say the same thing. I was just like, don't expect me to build your career for you. Right. This is a 50-50 relationship. Yeah. I will put into this representation, this management, as much as you put it into yourself. Yeah. So that's one. Yeah. A second thing is, like I said, are they multidisciplinary, right? It's not to say that we wouldn't sign people that only play one game, but do they do other things? How do they do in just chatting? How do they do in the YouTube world, right? How do they have other interests that fall outside of gaming, and is there opportunities there? And the advice I would give to you is always have other disciplines, always have other interests, and there's so many more worlds, especially because if you're coming in from gaming, almost every entertainment form and every industry is touching gaming anyways, right? Yeah. We can get a little bit into some of that stuff about kind of the partnerships that, I was able to get for some of my guys that have nothing to do with gaming, some of the biggest brands in the world, right? Mm-hmm. Another thing is, don't be afraid to fail. And what I mean by that, especially in the gaming and streaming world, is everyone is so focused on the numbers, especially early on, right? Yeah. And as you know, being a streamer, especially on Twitch, there's no algorithm discovery. There's none of that, right? It is a grind.
It is, definitely.
And I know there's a lot of people that, would stream to like 1 or 2 or 3 people. And I'm sure that you can have some of this advice, and they'll just stop, right? And sometimes it's just retweaking a couple of things or rethinking about how to do things. But a lot of people put so much stock in the numbers, right? What I will say about some of the smartest creators and how they think about numbers, don't look at the raw number itself. Look at the percentage. Okay. Because when you look at things at percentage, right, the numbers are bigger. Right. When you look at when you think about, I had one viewer yesterday, but I have 2 viewers today. That's 100% increase.
Yes, sir.
You know, and when you think about it like that, that's where it gets easier to digest.
Yeah.
Right. I implore people to think about it that way.
Okay. Yeah, man, that's a great way to look at it. And one thing that, you know, Chris always told me, like, you know, way back in the day, and it's one thing that I respect about him the most, is like the main thing has always been the main thing. And no matter what was going on, he had to make sure that he got that video out, or he had to do that stream. And, you know, that just goes to show the type of work ethic that he has, and the type of work ethic you have to become one of, if not probably the biggest, only COD content creator at the time now.
Exactly. And to that, I mean, going back to what I was saying, and when we were talking with Chris when we signed him, was, you know, what were his goals? What did he dream of, right? Yeah. And he talked about everything. He literally has manifested a lot of the things that, you know, has happened to him. You know, everything from being signed to FaZe to bringing in his boys to these crazy partnerships. The one thing I remember him saying to me when we first signed, he's like, Darren, there is one goal that I really want. I want to be Forbes 30 under 30.
Oh, I love that.
And not only was he Forbes 30 under 30, he was the face of the entire gaming vertical. Yeah. Right? And that was an exceptional class too. Ben Simmons was a part of it. A lot of his homies were a part of it. And so for me, like, that's how I work with the people that I represent. It starts with what you want and what are you going to put into it, and then I'll put fire and more oil and all of that into that. But it has to start with you.
I love that. You know, and that just goes to show people that think that they really want to do this. Like, if you really want to do this, you heard what the man said. Like, you really have to, quote unquote, kind of kill yourself to make it.
And here's the thing: it is true, right? Yeah. And I'm sure now you guys have understood that. In my experience, I've worked with every single type of entertainer you can think of: athletes, music artists, TV film actors, YouTubers, creators, podcast hosts. But the thing is that I will say that being a gamer / streamer creator is by far the most challenging out of any of those, right? And I'm not putting any of those other professions to say that they don't put in hard work. Obviously, athletes do, and music artists. But what I will say is that it's a different type of hard work on the gaming and streaming side, because there's so many forces working against creators growing. Yes. And not only that, it is every single year or every 6 months, there's a streamer that takes the entire thing to the next level, that forces the entire community to level up. You know, this year it was Kai. Yeah. You ask any streamer today, they all love and hate Kai at the same time.
Man, Kai, that dude, turned the streaming world on its head,
right?
Bro.
And now it's if you're not doing Kai level content, people are just like, oh shit. So every single time there's a motherfucker like Kai who just elevates this game to a next level, it forces every single person to also do the same thing, right? And I haven't really seen anything like that, you know, in any other, you know, profession.
Yeah, seriously. And you're literally at the mercy of the people that support you.
Exactly. Imagine major game changers like Steph Curry, who completely changed the game of basketball. Yeah. But imagine that happening every 3 months, and it's a different person.
Yeah, that's when you put it in those terms, bro. That's absolutely wild.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah,
it's wild.
So I want to get to, you know, you being the chief talent officer, and then now just recently you decided to leave FaZe. What went into you deciding to, you know, break away from FaZe?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I haven't discussed this publicly at all, so this is all new. A couple of factors, and some I alluded to. One, my personal lifestyle started to become very unhealthy, very unhealthy. You know, I'm sure you've seen me travel quite a bit, and it's for a lot of people, and I get a lot of DMs about this, and oh, what do you do? Your life looks so great, but it is exhausting. Burnout is real. especially when you travel that much, you're not actually traveling anywhere, right? You know, I'm not sightseeing. I'm not seeing the thing. I might be in those locations, but like people say, have you been to this city? Yeah. Have you been here? No, because I was only there for like 3-4 hours doing this one thing, and then I was out, right? So that was a contributing factor, and I saw myself, you know, getting very moody and short, and like it was just over time it just got to me, and I started to feel like this is not who I am, and a lot of it was I believe a part of the job that I was doing, but also I also felt like I was always, you know, like in my history of the last 15 years, what is the next thing? And I felt like I really had conquered the whole gaming, streaming, esports thing for a little bit, and I had a lot of passions and pet projects outside of FaZe that I felt like I wanted to put more time and effort into. And of course, you know, I felt like I checked all the boxes that I could possibly check at FaZe. You know, being an executive, being a C-level, taking it from a startup to going public, that was a whole other story. And you know, at the end of the day, we were scaling to a point where I felt like I wouldn't be doing my best work. You know, when there's too many cooks in the kitchen, and not to say that scaling is a bad thing, but I've always been a part of startups. You know, I love that grind. I love small teams. I love being nimble. I don't really like the red tape. You know, like I'm a person that like attacks something when I see it, and it has to be like right now.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. So all this stuff, you know, surrounding FaZe right now, you were kind of already gone when that stuff kind of started coming to the surface. Yeah. But from your perspective, a management side of the perspective, and I know this is going to be a question that you may or may not answer.
I'll try my best to see what I can answer and what I can't. Because it's still ongoing.
Obviously it's still ongoing, but from your perspective, from a management standpoint, all the things that are going on right now, can you speak to some of that?
What I will say is, on all sides, doesn't matter if you're the corporate side or the founder or talent side, don't believe every single thing that's out there. There is a lot of misinformation. There's not a lot of manipulated information, but at the same time, there is a lot of people that were actually hurt. You know, I will say that, hurt by a lot of bad actors, but primarily of which they haven't existed in the company for several years, which that's another thing too that's kind of like disheartening to resurface, because like I said, a lot of what the guys are talking about or alluding to, those individuals are not even here anymore. But when, you know, viewers watch it, they still connect, even though they're these people, with the people that still exist. And what I will say that is there's a lot of really good, innocent people, both on the talent side and on the corporate side, that have nothing to do with what's going on. Actually, the majority have nothing to do with what's going on. And I will say that is probably what I want to say, is because when I read a lot of the comments, it's, oh, corporate did this, corporate did that. And sure, maybe there were individuals on the corporate side that did, but that's not the story for everyone there. Yeah. So, you know, because I know that people wanted to know, so I know I had to ask it while I have you here. So switching gears a little bit, I know recently you started your own talent management company called Saeculum. Correct.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, actually, you're probably the first one to actually say it right the first time. And a lot, if you're going to ask me where that word come from,
you've been here before. You know what's going on.
No, that's what everyone asks me so Seculum, I'm a history buff.
Okay.
And Seculum was more of like a medieval term, and it was the metric used to denote a human lifetime, so 100 years.
Okay.
And so for me, it's, I always want to represent talent for a human lifetime. Okay. I'm not here to represent people for flash in the pan 2-3 years. Like, as you know, I'm a builder. Yes. I'm a long-term person. Yes. And so anybody that I work with, especially talent-wise, we're working for your long term.
Yeah.
Your whole safety.
I love that. See, I didn't know what the word meant, when I did my research to figure, to talk about it. But that's actually pretty dope when you think about it.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about Saeculum.
Yeah. So Seculum is a talent management, consulting, and also venture incubator.
Okay.
So traditional talent management, I still manage some of the guys at FaZe, Swag, Ronaldo, Kason, are all individuals that I still represent. I also have, like I said, a venture incubator business with some partners of mine called their company is called The Void.
Okay.
And they have been working on incubating venture businesses primarily for athletes.
Okay.
But they wanted to expand into my world, so I'm actually doing a business. I'm hoping I can talk about this.
Yeah, because I know we kind of talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, well, the thing I think what I can say is that I'm doing a business with FaZe Rug.
Yeah.
Rug has already talked about he's going to be launching a business.
Yes.
I don't know if he's already told his fans what it is, so I'll leave
we
it at
won't,
that.
I know what it is, but we won't talk about it out loud. But so you can't describe what it is. So what went into you and Rug doing this joint venture?
Yeah, so at this time I was still at FaZe Clan, and like I said, the things that I do with our talent is not just managing them playing video games and streaming. It's okay, how do I think about growing your empire, right? And of course, folks like KSI and Logan Paul with Prime and Beast with the festivals and all the burgers and all that kind of stuff. It has become a really hot topic in our industry for creator-led businesses.
Okay.
And of course, Rug always has an appetite to expand his business. Once again, if you guys want to know what an elite creator looks like, it's Rug. He's always constantly thinking about what he could do to keep himself relevant, to expand his empire. And so, this is one of those things where we had approached him saying if he was interested. And he was like, yeah, of course. So, what Void does with us is we go through a discovery process to essentially sit down with the athlete or the celebrity or the creator and really put some science behind and analyzing their entire social profiles and things of that nature to find what is the product or service or business that we're going to create using data and to find that wide space. So, Rug's business will be launching, I believe, in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So look out for that. But yeah, that's one portion of my business right now.
Okay.
Consulting, I've been consulting for various brands, esports orgs, and also consulting on a lot of kind of being on the board of gaming companies and developers, as they're kind of always thinking about how do we get this mainstream, how do we get celebrities attached, how do we get your gamers involved. But yeah, and then talent management, same thing, 360, not all gaming, but I have a reality stars, I have tattoo artists, I have other YouTubers, and then I have some of the FaZe guys.
Okay. As someone who's worked in the industry for quite a number of years, what would you say would be different, or what are some of the differences in your company aside from a different talent management company? Excuse me.
Yeah, well, not to my own horn, I think my experience is what I will lean into.
Yes,
there's very few people that have the experience that I have across multiple entertainment verticals, but also always being at the forefront of them. And that's where I live, right? And when I work with my clients, they always know that they're probably going to be one of the few people that are going to be able to do some of these things. Like, for example, FaZe Rug, I don't know if you guys saw this roll out a couple weeks ago, but he was one of 30 creators on Instagram to test out their new broadcast feature. Only 30, including Mark Zuckerberg. So when you think about how many people are on Instagram, these are the types of things that I kind of will help navigate for a lot of my clients, to be the first, to be the next gen. And then, of course, I'm really focused on building empires, right? So what else are you going to be doing, besides your day-to-day? How can I expand this products, merch, venture businesses, things of that nature, even getting into investing, right? So I often get approached by a lot of different early investing and angel seed round opportunities, and sometimes I'll bring my clients on aboard, right? Really expand them from just being creators to business moguls.
Yes. And that's what I love about you. Like I said, the relationship that I see that you have with some of the people that you represent. Yeah. I don't personally know Rug. I mean, I know of him and we've been around each other, and I don't personally know K-San, but we've been around each other. Yeah. But I do personally know Swag.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I always respected about you and his relationship is you guys just have a really good, not only working relationship, but you guys seem to truly and genuinely care about each other.
Swag is my brother now for life. I don't even consider him a client. I mean, this guy has been with me on my birthday. My birthday is New Year's, so it's not an easy thing to attach himself, but he's been with me. We were in Miami last year, this past year in Mexico together. So I think it's so important to have that type of relationship as management. If you're an agent, maybe not as much. You can be more transactional, but if you're planning to be a manager, you have to be able to have that really close, intimate, say whatever the fuck, with no holds barred. We got to be completely transparent, fight if we have to, it's got to be that, because essentially if I'm going to be, almost a concierge or an advisor to your career, we have to have that ultimate trust. And sometimes the most, I guess, I wouldn't say not successful, but not as successful as like the Swags of the world relationships are those that see me as almost like a suit, right? Because that means that they're probably not going to be as open or as transparent with me. They might be yes men because they think they have to say yes to me, and that's not the kind of relationship that I have with any of my clients. Like often now, my clients say no more than to say yes. Right. But I love to have a more honest relationship with my clients. And they know everything about me, and I know everything about them. Let's just say that with all the clients I've ever represented, there's probably stories that I'll take to the grave that we'll never talk. Like that's how close we are to those.
Right. Yeah. And some of the stories that I know, some of the stories I don't know. Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? But that's just me being around.
Yeah.
So, outside of you doing, what you're doing now, the talent management company and these joint ventures, I want to get to the point where I've seen you globe trotting.
Yeah.
And you're on the forefront of some pretty amazing things that are going to be happening not only now, but within the next 5, 10, 20 years. Yeah. Let's discuss some of that stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, look, I've traveled the world many times before, but this last trip that I just took really just changed everything. And I think it really just has to do with the timing and where we are in the world and what's going on and how the world is changing economically, politically, geographically, all of that. So I recently went out to the Middle East, and for a lot of you guys in entertainment or sports and entertainment, you've probably seen that they've been making some pretty heavy moves to bring entertainment into the Middle East region. So I was out there for a business conference, and I've been to Dubai before, I've been to Saudi before. But something about this trip was much different. And I think it was because, I remember talking to a lot of colleagues who've been to Dubai before, several years ago and in the past. And they're like, yeah, but isn't there so many restrictions and this and that and blah, 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 blah. And the religious and cultural sensitivities and differences. And I was like, absolutely, there is that. But I don't think that it has the chokehold that it had even 2-3 years ago, right? I remember being in Dubai and Saudi several years ago, and most of the women are obviously covered. Today, if you go to Dubai, you'll be lucky if you find any women covered.
Is that I've never been, but that's crazy.
And that's just changed in maybe the last 2 years.
2 years, right? Exactly. 2 years. Yeah.
The whole but do they not drink alcohol or not drink pork? It's like, if you're of that religion, maybe not, but that doesn't mean it's not available. Right. It's definitely there, and it's become such a diverse place. I mean, it almost feels like what LA wants to be.
Okay, I can see that.
And safer.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all walks of life.
Yeah.
And so another thing too is the amount of money that region is investing into itself. Where every other economy around the world is going to the shitter, you have these guys spending trillions of dollars building infrastructure over there, and very quickly and with quality, right? Yeah. For those of you guys that have been to Vegas, when you guys walk the strip, you know, everything looks so beautiful. But if you go on the inside, the quality might not be there. But Dubai, everything is
quality.
Everything.
Okay.
And there's nothing that you can't do there that you can't do around the world. I mean, shit, they have an indoor skiing resort. You know, when 100-degree weather, you can go skiing if you wanted to. So they're building a lot of the infrastructures of entertainment. Their sports, and they're building arenas. You know, they just opened the new Royal Atlantis Hotel and Resort, and they brought Beyonce there to perform. It was like last month. But, you know, and it's specifically in gaming, you know, the Middle East region wants to be the gaming and esports hub of the world, and Saudi's making those plays. Last year, they threw an event called Gamers 8, and they had massive prize pools, and they're doing it again this year, and it's even more massive than the previous years, right? And these are prize pools that shouldn't even happen in this economy, but it's happening, right? And they're flying everybody in from around the world to be a part of this. And of course, you know, a lot of people and brands and companies are thinking the same thing. You know, there's not a restaurant, a fashion designer, a brand that you can't think of around the world that doesn't exist there. It exists there. Everything. And you know, when I look at the potential for growth across every region, right? And so on the same trip, I also went to Southeast Asia, Singapore and Bangkok specifically. These are the two regions that have the highest potential for growth. Right. I read this article specifically about the industry, the music industry in 2022, and there's this map about the percentage growth of each region, and the slowest was America, even though you know, obviously America dominates entertainment. The global entertainment GDP, I believe that the US is about 30 or 40%. When you look into the movie, TV, film industry, and you look at the top 100 grossing movies of the last year, 90% of them are still American. But the one thing that's different was in the music. It was in the music industry. The top 10 most successful artists in the world, 9 out of the 10 of them were not American. Number 1 was American, that's Taylor Swift.
And then number 2.
But everyone else, and yes, The Weeknd and Drake were on that list, but they're Canadian. Shout out 6.
Yeah, I was gonna say shout out to the 6.
Shout out to the 6. They're not American, but everyone else was international, right? And you have, you know, your K-pop stars, you have your Bad Bunnies and your J Balvins, you know, and what that is kind of like the microcosm of the rest of the entertainment industry in my eyes, is that the rest of the world is finally ready to accept that entertainment primarily doesn't need to come from US, that before language barriers were obviously a big thing, but there's some fixes to that, you know, and people are just ready to accept that, you know, there's going to be different types of people in the future not coming from America. And what I've also seen is that, you know, with the birth of like all these social media platforms, and especially TikTok, it's almost becoming borderless, right? And I know there's this trend a couple weeks back of people saying, you know, type in France in Instagram and type in France in TikTok in your search and see what happens. And, you know, on Instagram, if you search Paris, France, you're going to see the Eiffel Tower, great photo shoots, you know, couples, whatever. You type in Paris, France on TikTok, it's just protests, right? So what that means is, though, that the younger generation is more on TikTok than they are on Instagram. They get to discover things that they want to discover, how they want to discover it, and more real, right? So when it comes to entertainment, you know, I feel like kids are now watching all forms of entertainment from around the world, not just from America, if they're American at least, and it's exposing them to so many new forms of entertainment and talent and artists, and not only that, I also believe that the current entertainment model is antiquated. And that's the biggest thing. And I don't know. I don't want to give too much of my sauce of what I'm building.
No, we don't want to.
But like, let's just say that I am working on attempting to disrupt this 100-year-old entertainment model that has been really, I guess, monopolized by some of the, the biggest TV networks, movie studios, entertainment conglomerates, record labels. And nothing against, any of the people running those businesses, but I do believe that we're entering a new world where technology is rapidly expanding and exponentially growing in crazier ways, and just the old way of doing things are just not it.
It's just out of date.
It's out of date. It's
so
expensive.
Yeah, it is. So I have to ask you this question. Seeing some of the things that are happening around the world, you have all these conspiracy theorists and things of that nature. Do you ever get nervous trying to buck the system?
Yes and no at the same time. Okay. Here's the thing. I'll say there's always some kind of element of caution. So I'll start with the yes first, and especially when you're dealing with kind of global situations, and especially with everything going on in the world and politics and how the world stage is reshaping itself. Sure, obviously I need to be very cautious about that, and the different governments and things of that nature. But also in my experience, I've been in now rooms with the highest executives and talent from around the world, and for me, it's sometimes that saying, never meet your heroes. And so for me, I've been in rooms with some people that I've regarded as like almost mentors to me, but then talking to them in rooms, I'm just like, man, I don't know if you're as smart as I thought you were, and not to say I'm a smart individual, but I was just like, if these guys are at the top of their game and they're the kings of this, and their ideas are not as fresh or not as compelling as I think they are, that's where I get I need to move
I gotta do this.
I gotta do this, right? Because if it's not me, it's someone else, So it's a little bit of both. I move cautiously, but I'm also very bullish at the same time.
You have to be. What do they say? Scared money don't make money, man.
Exactly.
It don't.
Exactly.
And having these fresh ideas and these fresh thoughts, it's the word. What's the word I'm looking for? It's something that I admire about you.
Thank you.
From afar, I've known you for maybe a couple years now, but from afar, I always admired who you were, and being on the forefront of the things that you are trying to become. I admire that. You know what I mean? And I know that recently when you were in the UAE, you did a speaking engagement, correct? What was that about?
It was actually about the state of esports.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was right in the thick of everything going on, and basically it was kind of some of the points that I made, or what are some things that, if you're new to the esports industry, what to avoid. Okay. What mistakes have occurred, how do we progress forward, but the main topic was stability. Okay. Right, because that's been a really kind of elephant in the room for the esports industry. Is this industry stable enough to survive long term? Because right now it doesn't look like it. Right. And so I talked about some of those things, about what would be needed to happen in order for an industry like ours to be stable.
Can you speak to a couple of the points that you made?
Yeah. One, especially, everyone's always circling about the esports org industry, right? And I actually had this prediction almost 6 or 7 years ago. This is when I had my management company with Pokey and all of them. I was on this panel, and I was the new guy. I was the guy that knew nothing about esports and gaming, and I was on a panel with, I won't say who, but let's just say very prominent North American esports orgs and their CEOs and founders. Okay. And they were all purists. They're all esports competitive purists, right? And I was the guy that said, you guys need to pivot to your creators and your streamers. And I remember this. All of them were just like, you know nothing about our space. Right. Fast forward a couple years later, they all adopted the same model. Yeah. But what had happened was that they didn't have the experience to know that what they were building was already a business model that had failed in entertainment before. And that failed model was what I was in, which is at Maker Studios, which was an MCN model. And that's exactly what esports orgs have evolved into, was a reskinned MCN.
Okay.
And like I said, that business model is doomed from the very beginning. Another thing too was that over the last couple of years, because everyone did not adopt what FaZe Clan did with management. Everyone paid for their creators to be a part of the roster. Right. And of course, every single year, it got exponentially more expensive, and it made no business sense to keep signing these big creators for 7-8 figures in equity, and there was no ROI. ROI.
Gotta have the ROI.
Yeah. Well, it's gotten to a point now. It's now a runaway train, and if you probably have seen a lot of esports orgs, like there hasn't been any massive signings in the last 6 to 9 months. There has been a lot of dropping.
Right. Yeah.
Just because a lot of esports orgs are being a little bit smarter about, hey, this is not the move. And so, yes, the esports org has always been claiming to be talent first, type of organization. And that definition is blurred, right? I think what needs to be into stability, which is what a lot of people are now doing, what I'm doing, is how do you work with talent to build new things with them, new IPs, and this is where, I felt like the org should have started this way sooner. Now it's too late because, building new IP and ventures are now being done by folks on the outside like me. You know what I mean? And there's very little trust between talent right now and orgs, not just FaZe or what, like every org, everywhere, right? And so, look, I don't have the answers as to what exactly needs to happen. All I know is that everybody in the industry needs to look at themselves in the mirror, or I don't know, call each other and get together and figure it out as an entire industry. I'm just saying,
there you go.
That's a lot of people are not talking to each other, especially the esports owners who are all going through the exact same thing, but no one is talking to each other about it. Why not get together and try to fix an industry-wide issue, right? That's what I think needs to happen.
And I also think, they think because it's like competitive, and there is elements of being in competition with each other.
Yeah.
But then, when it comes to something on a global scale, and when I say global, I mean global as far as esports industry itself, they can sit down and talk to each other. And I also think a lot of times people don't realize the difference in gaming and what esports actually is.
Absolutely. And especially the non-endemics, right? And when I went out to the UAE and spoken on a conference, that's exactly what the majority of the people in the crowd, they didn't know the difference, right? And they would always talk about it interchangeably, and it's just not that. The thing is that everyone knows that competitive esports is a very hard business, and the reason being is because all your players and staff are salaried, so you're already in the hole. You don't actually have any ROI unless you win competitions, and then you have to split it. And then, of course, again, to the topic of it's such an expensive risk because you just don't even know how long that title is going to last. Like, let's talk about Overwatch League, for example, and the fees that some of these orgs had to pay for their slots only for it to be non-existent a couple of years later.
Right.
You know what I mean? So for the esports side, like in order for that to be stable, there needs to be more Counter-Strikes. There needs to be more Dotas. But you just don't know if any of these games will even last that long. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so if you're going to be attempting to do an esports org, you can't predicate your entire business on that.
Right.
You can't. And then obviously, so what was the counter to that, right? Which was you had to develop content, right? And build an audience there and all that kind of stuff, which is still vitally important, but it's not esports now. We're talking about just kind of content creation and just general gaming, right? So, I believe in order to have sustainability over time, you got to get off these two models. You got to evolve this because the creator model has already evolved. I mean, it's already been a thing. It's like the only thing, what it really is everyone thinks this is brand new. The reality is no, gaming and esports just got to the train station that YouTubers were already at.
Yeah.
Right? Or other digital creators were already at.
Yeah.
It's just, once again, we're just the big shiny new toy, so everyone thinks it's new, but it's not. Right. But like the YouTubers, they've evolved. You know, they've evolved to be business owners and doing all these other things. And that's just the way that, you know, this industry has to evolve as well. I just don't know if the major players will look the same anymore. Like, I don't know if esports orgs, and I really hope that they do, will last. I think esports and gaming will last, but might not look like this, right? Gaming orgs and teams need a new value proposition to talent and to their audience, because what it currently isn't doing it for either party.
I understand. Yeah. So will Saeculum ever be in direct competition with some of these bigger esports organizations, or is it just you're just gonna kind of stay?
I already am, for sure.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I already am. But here's the thing, I am I'm in competition because of its current business model, right? But if they evolve into other things, I might not be. But currently, I definitely am, right? I'm both a competitor, but I'm also the person on the other side of the table for a lot of these things. I will say once again, especially like building new IP and ventures, where I know a lot of esports orgs are looking to go. Folks like myself are already doing it on the outside, and I'm not taking 30-40%, you know. And similarly, if the talent are represented at some of the bigger talent agencies, they're doing some of that as well. So right now, what I've seen and why esports orgs are kind of a dying model is because talent don't look at esports orgs as esports orgs. They look at them like brand partners. How much money are you going to pay me? Okay, based on how much you're paying me, you're going to be on this priority list of where that ranks. If I have another brand that's paying me more than you, guess what?
I'm going.
You're not going to be more of a priority than that. And every esports orgs think that they need to be the number one priority. The creator's saying, why? You guys don't pay me as much as, you know, brand A does. Right. You know, so yeah, and the way that these contracts are set up are very much like brand deals. Right. Hey, sign to us. Here are a bunch of deliverables. We'll pay you X, Y, and Z. Right. It's very transactional. Right. You have to move off the transactional business model, because if not, there's going to be no loyalty, because their agents and managers are just going to be like, okay, well, this contract is up. Are you going to pay my client more? No? Great. If not, we're shopping somewhere else. Right. And that's why this entire business model has failed, because it got so expensive that no org can actually afford creators
to continue.
You can't.
Yeah, to churn those dollars. If dollars not coming in and you're just churning dollars you already had, that's a sign of bankruptcy.
Yeah, and everyone thinks that signing talent, like if I sign like a tier S, like who has millions and millions of followers, I can just add that number to the org, and all of a sudden, you know, their fans are our fans, and it's not that at all.
Yeah, I definitely understand that.
Yeah,
and that's why, like, you know, like I said, when I saw you a couple weeks ago, man, like, you got some things going on.
Yeah,
you know, and I admire that.
Thank you.
And you're what do they call it? You're a maverick and a trailblazer.
Man, I like to think that I try to be.
Right.
You know, I'm just always, you know, I get bored easily too.
Right.
I think this is more of like a personal trauma of mine, where, you know, my parents are on the older side. They could probably be as old as could be my grandparents. Right. There's a generational gap. And I always just felt like the relationship I had with them was challenging, because we could never relate to each other.
Right.
There's such a generational gap, and they're like traditional Asian parents too.
Right.
And today it's funny, because I said that if I ever had kids, I'd probably be either the coolest dad or the most embarrassing dad, because I probably know more about what they're into than they do.
Right. I have that dynamic with both of my daughters, but more so my 15-year-old. Yeah, man. Like, I'm the embarrassing dad.
Yeah, I might be that too. Like, I know all the trends, I know all the lingo,
all of that stuff.
I know how they speak. You know, I can speak exactly their language.
Yeah.
But you know, I've always been at the forefront. I always wanted to be in the know. I never wanted to not know, if I did have kids, what they were into or things of that nature. And I think that's just been a part of my personality. Okay, well, The kids are always going to know what the next thing is. So any business that I always build, it's like I always look at my core customer base or audience base. It's always 13 to 24. Always.
Yeah.
Always.
And I look at when I look at my YouTube analytics, that's my biggest. Yeah. That's my biggest little graph. Yeah. Is the 13 to 24-year-olds.
Yeah. Oh, that's another thing. The advice for your creators. Depending on what the type of content that you are gonna create, and I don't even know if I should say this, parents are gonna hate me, but when I even tell my creators who even have a younger fan base, I always say, create your content a little bit aged up, a little bit, right? And here's and the thing is that if you want lifelong fans, you want to get them early enough, but with the content that they're going to grow into. Okay. Right? Like, if you're creating, Barney, for example, after 6 years old, that fan is no longer going to be a fan, and you find the new 5-year-old. Whereas, if you are making content for, let's say, 18 to 24-year-olds, just know that your 13-year-old is going to find that content anyways. So why not start them to be fans now? So you have a 10 to 15-year-old fan, year-old fan versus a 2 to 3 year stint. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. I've always primarily focused my businesses in that age range.
And that's why I think, like, for me specifically, leaving Call of Duty, I kind of was a little forced out just because I just didn't enjoy the game anymore. But I think specifically what I do, interviewing people like yourself and the Swags and the Booyahs, like, that's kind of where my business motto is as well. Because the people that watch them, right, is the 13 to 30-year-old
aspiring to do
what they are. You know what I mean? And it's important. And and I know I keep saying this, but I'm one for somebody to give in their flowers, bro. I've got to give you your flowers. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
You're inspiring to me. Can you tell me, like, throughout your lifetime, as someone who inspires me, but other people that know who you are, who are some of the people that have inspired you?
Oof. So my all-time favorite person that I've admired to this day, and actually I have a tattoo inspired by him, is Robin Williams.
Okay.
His career, the way that he is spoken about mental health, his family, things of that nature, and all the accolades and things he's ever achieved, to all the different roles that he has played in his career. That is an individual that I've always admired, like watching his interviews, how he speaks, how he's always just knowing that he was going through some kind of mental personal things, but turn it on, he's the funniest guy alive. You know what I mean? Yeah. And another thing too, which made me fall in love with him, is his role in my favorite movie ever, Good Will Hunting.
Okay.
And this tattoo that I have of him is the last 3 words of the monologue that he spoke to Matt Damon on the bench. Okay. And those last words are, "Your move, Chief." And basically it's a reminder of, if I want to explore the world, if I want to learn, then it's on me. It's on me to make that move.
I love that, and you're doing it, man.
Yeah,
and you're absolutely doing it. And someone that's as educated as you and as well versed, right? To the people that are watching this, is there a book that you would recommend for someone to read, to maybe somebody that wants to be a little bit more business minded, or that is currently trying to become an entrepreneur?
The book is called, I believe it's called The Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Ooh, because that's what you have to do when it comes to doing something that people don't necessarily agree with.
A great life and business.
Very true.
It is very therapeutic in the way to help manage emotions as well.
Okay.
To really look at things from a macro level. And when we go through our stresses in everyday life, sometimes the little things seem so big, but in the grand scheme of things, really they're not. And so it's a book to really think about where to focus your energy, where you should give a fuck versus where you shouldn't give a fuck.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that, bro. Like I said, man, you're super inspiring, and I appreciate the time, brother. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, tell the fans, people that know of you, or if you something you want to plug. I don't know anything, brother.
I mean, I got nothing to plug, but I do appreciate you, having me on. This is fun. Like I said, there's a lot of things I haven't been able to talk about in public, so I appreciate you giving me that platform. But yeah, I guess for the viewers watching, continue to watch this because there's a lot of great guests that a lot of gems that you can learn, and keep grinding, don't stop. For anyone like thinking about doing it, just do it. Just do it.
I love that. That's the most basic but complex thing you can say.
And I'll tell you, that is absolutely so true to the nth degree.
Yeah.
That people think it's so cliche to say, but like most people don't realize that the hardest part is just starting.
Yes.
And like I said, once I started and got to a certain point in my life, I'm always just like, why didn't I start this sooner? Why do I always think that I wouldn't be able to do this? Or why did I think that the people that already did this are exponentially smarter than I am? And I'll tell you what, most of the world is not as smart as you think they are.
Man, and that's one thing that I've learned too is like, they're not as smart as you think you are, but also like a lot of times the people that succeed the most are the people that just didn't give up.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I would always put perseverance over even knowledge. Yeah.
Because your story and your career and just your life is perseverance. Yours particularly.
For sure. I was not the smartest kid in school. I failed almost every class in my freshman year of college. I don't even know how I graduated, to be honest. So I was never academically, the best. And I sure as hell don't think that I'm the smartest person in any room. But it should give you confidence that you don't need to be to do the things that you want to do.
I love that. Because experience is the best teacher.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Experience is experience.
Yep. Period.
Loki said that.
There you go. My brother, thank you so much for the time, bro. I really appreciate you doing this because I know you're super busy. You came down and bless us with your presence. So that has been Darren Yan, founder of, I had the name in my head.
You got it.
Seculum.
Yes, sir.
Talent management company, formerly of FaZe, Globetrotter, Trailblazer, just an all-around great individual. We appreciate his time. If you guys haven't already done so, man, go ahead and hit that subscribe button one time. I'd appreciate it. Make sure you drop a like so we can get recommended because that's what we really need to do.
Turn those noties on.
Turn those noties on because we want to continue to bring you guests like him, the access to people that you would normally not be able to see. That's how we come in on the Reconize Game podcast. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next podcast. Deuces, y'all.